fuck?
Boy, ain't no fucking way, boy.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
To Quora. This will include both scalings and general opinions about Naruto Boruto. I'm really into Boruto at the moment, so that's what I would want to talk about mostly. I don't watch Boruto, so I won't be able to provide any good input there. Curse Mark Stage 2 Sasuke and One Tails Naruto were both Kage level. Okay, let's look at the reasoning. First of all, I say absolutely not. I think that they're barely hitting Jonin level. But let's see. I say this because you can argue that Sasuke at this point is stronger than Kabuto, who could somewhat fight on par with Part 1 base Tsunade, who was obviously Kage level, and Naruto's on Sasuke's level, so he's also Kage level. Tsunade may have been fear hacks and stuff, but she still took damage from Kabuto beforehand, so I see this as valid. Maybe I need to reread the fight or rewatch it, but I'm fairly certain that the only reason Kabuto did any significant damage was because Tsunade was not even fear hacks. She was like completely traumatized that she couldn't really do anything. And simply because Kabuto did damage to a Kage doesn't mean that he is Kage level. I don't think that's beginning of Part 1 Naruto. Kakashi is Kage level, but I do think that he could potentially hurt a Kage. This isn't that controversial when I think of it at first glance, or just off the top of my head, but it definitely seems a little bit incorrect to me. I don't see any way to put Kabuto at Kage level. In fact, Orochimaru blatantly states that Kabuto's are on the same strength as Kakashi, and I don't think Kakashi was Kage level at that point. Definitely later on in like Shippuden, mid Shippuden, because he literally gets elected to be Hokage, but I don't think that early Part 1 Kakashi was Kage level. I'm reading in my head. Okay, this is a tough thing to disagree with because he says that people are criticizing Naruto for not having good character development, which I actually agree with. I think that his growth as a character is phenomenal, from everywhere between like very beginning of the series up into Pain. But after Pain, I think his character development just like flatlines. Like it's just the same thing. Like the amount of times he essentially repeated the exact same sentence in the war when he's fighting Obito, it's like insane. He didn't change, and there were no interesting ups and downs with Naruto's character during the war arc or after Pain, or I guess you could say after he ran into Sasuke in the Land of Iron. Versus like Sasuke, I think Sasuke is a better written character than Naruto, and part of it is because Sasuke's character doesn't flatline. Even in the war arc, the way his character changes, the things that make his character change are, I think, very compelling. I mean, meeting Itachi, talking to the previous Kage, I found myself being much more engaged with Sasuke than Naruto when they were both in the war arc. And not regarding their fighting ability or anything, just like dialogue. In terms of their dialogue, I felt Naruto was kind of bad in this, I guess you could say, the last 30% of Shippuden. This isn't really a hot take. Okay, let's read this. He was biased towards Sasuke, hardly saw Naruto, Sakura, or anything during Naruto. He was always mistreated. Always too lazy towards his Naruto, never appointed someone else like Chakra. Even left Sasuke on his own to further sound before brainwashed him. Although Kakashi was well aware that Harushima and were behind Sasuke, and Blue told me Sakura should have decided to train her because lessons were my opponent teacher to teach. Horrible teacher. That is fair. Now the reason he didn't teach Naruto anything is because Jiraiya told him that he'll train Naruto, so don't worry about Naruto. But the Sakura thing, you are definitely correct. A teacher's supposed to teach, and Kakashi really didn't do anything. Now, I think a lot of the quote-unquote teaching that occurred happened off-screen with him doing, like, side missions. So, and that's sort of exhibited by everyone getting stronger without them really doing any on-screen training. So, maybe we can't kill Kakashi. But, these aren't terrible takes, in my opinion. The Byakugan is above all forms of the Sharingan except for the Mangekyo and above, which essentially claims that before Uchiha Massacre, the average Hyuga was always superior to the average Uchiha. This is not a hot take, in my opinion. I think that's perfectly reasonable. He does say except for the Mangekyo and above, so I don't think that's crazy. These are not hot takes. These are like reasonable takes. This is a very good one. I've always said this. The Hyuga were wasted. In fact, I think this is probably the biggest issue with Shippuden. The issue with Shippuden is that Kishimoto just threw all the side characters to the side. In fact, in part 1, they didn't really feel like side characters. They all sort of felt like main characters in some sense. Lee, Gaara, Neji, all these characters weren't really side characters. They felt very endemic to the story. In Shippuden, bro, they literally Kishimoto just threw them to the trash. So I think this is fine. I mean, this is a very good point. Tobirama wasn't a racist towards the Uchihas, rather he honored them with a highly valued position. Tobirama wasn't a racist. I mean, okay, so technically he wasn't, because the Uchiha are not a race. Was he discriminatory? Yes. This doesn't really seem to be an argument against Tobirama being discriminatory. There seems to be an argument against him not being justified for being discriminatory. As far as I can tell, this is an argument that's simply saying, yeah, he was discriminatory, but it was for the right reason. But it doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely discriminatory. The Solo King is kind of overrated. I actually love Itachi, but come on, let's be honest. There's so many characters apart from the demigods even who can actually beat or give a tough fight to Itachi. And one such example is Tobirama was perfect after the Itachi, but guess what? He isn't as hyped at all just because he lacks the amount of plot and screen time Itachi got, so people don't seem to acknowledge what a golden shinobi Tobirama is. Okay, so there's two things here. One, I've never understood the Itachi hype. I think Itachi's stronger than what a lot of people think, but there's that like small part of the Naruto community who thinks that he's like literally a solo king. So that means he's overrated, at least in that sense. As for Tobirama is very weird, because in my opinion, we can't even really scale Tobirama because he doesn't do anything, at least by himself. Throughout the entire series, you don't really see him do anything. So it's very difficult to put him at a certain level. And I think because of that, I can't agree with the end, or I guess the middle, where he says he would be a perfect, he would give Itachi a tough fight. I don't know. I can't agree, but I also can't disagree. Because we really don't know how strong Tobirama is. In fact, nobody knows. In fact, I can count on my finger everything he does. So he does switch places with Minato when they're fighting Jubito. He does teleport them behind Jubito. The only feat I can think of is when the True Seeking Orb was about to blow up Minato, and then Tobirama comes in and teleports it away. That's it. And even if that is an impressive feat, which it is, it's still difficult to scale somebody off of that. So people ask me how strong Tobirama is, I literally just say I don't know. You can maybe scale him to Kin and Gin. That's about it. And this is one thing I want to say about Tobirama. I do think people overrate him, but I also do think people underrate him. And then again, it's largely because we don't know anything about him. But when people say, because there's like a running debate when, there's people that say, oh, Tobirama's weak because he died to 10 ninja. like 10 S-class ninja. Then there's people who say, oh, wait, hold on, but those ninja were S-class. They were probably a Koski level or something. So I actually agree with the first statement more than the second statement. First of all, like, the Kikiku and Genkiku Force were not a Koski level. First, if they were a Koski level, they would have been resurrected in the war. 100%. You know why? Because if they were Akatsuki level, Kabuto would have revived them because he literally revived the Akatsuki. So why not have two Akatsukis? It's very clear that the Kinkaku and Kinkaku Force were not Akatsuki level. In fact, majority of the people in the Akatsuki aren't even S tier. They're like 1,000 times stronger. Obito isn't, Pain isn't, Itachi isn't, Kasame isn't. The only like S tier who could probably like maybe be beaten by like a quote unquote S tier Anbu ninja is maybe Hidan. Everyone else is like mid Kage level at the very least. So saying that Toriyama died to 10 Akatsuki level ninjas is just like absurd. In fact, I think that's just disrespectful to the Akatsuki. Understood character in the series. I would kind of agree with this. I think Sasuke is the best character in Naruto. The best written character in Naruto. And yes, I think he's a better written character than Naruto. There's no way I'm going to believe that Sasori is stronger than Deidara, even despite this comment. I mean, this is just ignorance. I mean, Deidara flat out said it, and this is the same guy who blew himself up. So Deidara is not the type of person to admit that someone is superior to him. So if he does do it, it must mean that he genuinely believes it. Now, another way that you could prove that Sasori is stronger than Deidara is because Sasori kills, I think, the third Kazekage, who was stated to be the strongest Kazekage. Which therefore means he's stronger than Gaara, the same Gaara who pretty much beat Deidara. I know Gaara technically lost, but Gaara would have won. In fact, he actually ripped off Deidara's arm. So, I mean, the only reason Deidara won is because he essentially held the whole village hostage. I do not think that Deidara is stronger than Sasori. I'm sorry. Is in between this and this. DMS Kakashi is a way bigger ass pull. It makes zero sense. This is like plot armor times 20. Baryon mode is pretty stupid, in my opinion, but DMS Kakashi is just absolutely insane. How the hell do you get eyes from the spirit world? We never even seen the spirit world once in Naruto. And they introduce it at the very end. Obito somehow gave him the soul of his Mangekyo. Also, how does he have a perfect Susanoo? How does he have a perfect Susanoo with a base Mangekyo? And technically, you could unlock the perfect Susanoo with the base Mangekyo. The issue is just that you go blind before your Susanoo develops far enough. But how Kakashi never used Susanoo? He's never used the skeleton Susanoo. He's never used the clothed Susanoo. Never used the armor Susanoo. So I don't get how we got a perfect Susanoo. This is for sure one of the biggest ass pulls in Naruto. 100%. I definitely agree with this. I don't think Baryon mode is really that bad. Sage Kabuto is one of the most underrated shinobi ever. He is underrated, and the reason he's underrated is because the war arc sucks. And what I mean by that is the war arc is terrible at making things feel cool, making certain characters feel powerful. It's really a shame that, you know, like one of the things that I always say is, well, first of all, there's two things. I think Itachi and Sasuke versus Kabuto is a very, very underwhelming fight. It's one of the worst fights in the series, in my opinion. And one of the reasons I say that is because of, well, the second thing that I wanted to say. They don't feel powerful. And he said Kabuto's underrated, and, well, he's right. He is underrated, but it's because of the way that the fight is actually presented. If I took someone who's never watched Naruto or never watched anime a single time in their life, and I showed them Lee versus Gaara, and in the second I showed them Kabuto versus the Uchihas, they would think that Lee and Gaara were more powerful shinobi. 100%. And they're of course not more powerful, right? Lee and Gaara would get absolutely destroyed, but it's about the way that the fight is presented. And for characters who are supposed to be so strong and not underrated, the way Kabuto and just a lot of characters in the war arc were presented was just very, very underwhelming, very, very stale. We should have been given way more info about Hanzo. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Out of all the characters we know little about, the undisputed character that we should have known the most about was Rin. Because you cannot have Rin, essentially the impetus behind the you can't have Rin, who's essentially the motivation behind all of Obito's actions, be a character that we know nothing about. If Obito was like a side villain, it would be like whatever. But if you're going to make Obito be essentially the biggest villain in the series, then the source of his motivation needs to be very well defined and very well explained. Which obviously means Rin and his relationship with Rin need to be very well defined and very well displayed, because that's his motivation in some sense, or part of his motivation, or at the very least his motivation is sourced in that. So because of that, Rin should have been way more developed. We should have known way more about Rin, and Obito's feelings for Rin should have been much more developed and much more reasonable. So I 100% disagree with this. We should have known more about Rin. 100%. Real talent is not her monster strength that makes her useful. Her medical abilities surpass those of Sonata. Her Tejas heals other relatives to Hidan, Kaguzu, or Kakashi. She's the greatest strategist. She's a great strategist and a great shinobi. Okay, so calling people a bigot for calling Sakura useless is stupid. You should delete that part. I do agree Sakura absolutely is not useless. The reason people call her useless is, one, they don't like her, and two, she doesn't feel useful. She feels useless. And here's what I mean by this. So sometimes characters do impressive things, but sometimes they don't really feel that impressive. It's pretty much like what I said earlier with the fights. Sometimes you can have two extremely powerful characters who are like doing pretty insane things, but when you're watching the fight or reading the fight, they don't feel that powerful. And I think that Sakura is a perfect example of this when it comes to her usefulness. So some of the useful things that she does is she heals the entire Shinobi Alliance. She pretty much nukes the entire battlefield with her punches. But part of the issue, she also heals Naruto when he's on the brink of death. So part of the reason that she feels useless, despite all those examples of usefulness that I gave, is because those examples of usefulness don't feel important or impressive, although on paper they are. So healing the entire Shinobi Alliance is, on paper, very impressive, and that does make you useful. But it doesn't feel impressive to the viewer, or it doesn't feel important to the viewer. You know why? Because nobody cares about the Shinobi Alliance. Because we saw thousands of them get nuked by Madara. So healing them does not feel important. It feels trivial. It's kind of the same thing with healing Naruto from the brink of death. It doesn't feel important. You know why? Because nobody thought Naruto was going to die anyway. To make a character feel useful, you can't only make them be useful on paper. You have to actually allow there to be real tension, uncertainty in the viewer's mind to make a character feel useful. A perfect example of this is the fact that nobody even remembers the person who healed Sasuke from the brink of death. It was Kabuto. A lot of people don't remember that. And the reason they don't remember that is because nobody cares, because Sasuke was not going to die anyway. So that's a perfect example. So that's sort of what I mean when I say Sakura isn't useless, but she feels useless, because a lot of the good stuff that she does just doesn't feel important. And a lot of the bad stuff that she does actually does feel very important. Like when she refused to kill Sasuke after drugging her teammates.